My name is Helen D. Pickens, and I am 29 years old. I walked into the resort lobby at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon with a duffel bag on my shoulder and an engagement ring in my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying that ring for 3 weeks, waiting for what my boyfriend kept calling the perfect moment. This trip was supposed to be it, the reset, the chance to remember why we chose each other in the first place. Instead, the first thing I saw was his ex-girlfriend standing at the check-in desk with 2 suitcases that matched his exactly. Same navy blue hardshells, same palm tree luggage tags, same confidence in the way she leaned against the counter like she belonged there. She looked up when the doors slid open, and her expression shifted from smug to confused in half a second. My boyfriend turned around holding 2 key cards. His smile froze. He said nothing for 5 full seconds, just stood there with his mouth slightly open, while his eyes flicked between me and her, like he was calculating which lie would cost him less. The ring box felt heavier in my pocket than it had all month. 3 months earlier, he'd started talking about needing space, about feeling disconnected, about wanting to reset. We'd been together 2 years, separate apartments, busy schedules, but we saw each other constantly. I took him seriously. I researched retreats, weekends away, anything that might help. When he suggested this resort trip, secluded and romantic, I said yes without hesitation. He told me he'd handle everything. That should have been the first red flag. He never handled logistics, ever. But suddenly, he was organized, efficient, booked weeks in advance. Now I knew why. "Helen," he finally said, voice tight, "this isn't what it looks like." I set my duffel bag down on the tile. The sound echoed through the open space. I looked at his ex, then back at him. "What does it look like?" She stepped back instinctively. He started talking fast, about how the trip was booked last year, non-refundable, about not wanting to waste money, about thinking we could all just figure it out. Her ex-girlfriend cleared her throat. "She told me you broke up 2 weeks ago." That sentence erased me completely. 2 weeks ago, I'd been at his parents' house for brunch. His father asked me if I saw a future with his son. I said yes. 2 weeks ago, he kissed me goodbye and said he loved me. 2 weeks ago, I'd been planning to propose my own forever to someone who had already told another woman I was gone. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the ring box. I didn't open it. I just held it there between us. His face drained of color. "I was going to ask you to marry me tonight," I said. She reached for it. I pulled it back. "You don't get to touch this." I walked out before either of them could say another word. And that was the moment my reset actually began. 3 months before the lobby, he started using words like distance and clarity. He said he felt disconnected, like the spark needed oxygen. We hadn't been fighting. We weren't even unhappy in obvious ways. We were busy. I worked long days, doing site inspections and reports, and he bounced between shifts and projects, always tired, always thinking. When he said we needed to remember why we fell in love, I listened. I adjusted. I cleared weekends. I suggested date nights and small trips. I thought love was something you worked at, not something you quietly replaced. When he suggested the resort in late September, he sounded hopeful, romantic even. Secluded, he said. Couples activities, spa days, ocean views. He sent me the link. I told him to book it. He said he'd handle everything. Looking back, that sentence should have stopped me. He never handled details. He missed appointments, forgot bills, needed reminders for everything from oil changes to dentist visits. But suddenly, he was organized, decisive, weeks ahead of schedule. I mistook that competence for commitment. The ring cost me $8,400. I worked overtime for 6 months to afford it, picking up weekend shifts and projects outside the city. White gold band, princess cut diamond. Exactly the one he pointed out 9 months earlier when we passed a jewelry store window. He pressed his hand to the glass and said, "If anyone ever proposes to me, that's the one." I took a photo of the display case that night. I went back the next week and put down a deposit. The jeweler, an older woman named Christina, helped me choose the setting. I planned everything down to the minute. Dinner at 7:30, ocean view table, dessert with the ring hidden in a custom shell-shaped box. I even coordinated with the staff. My sister Emma was flying in to celebrate afterward. I thought I was planning a beginning. He was planning an exit. He mentioned his ex exactly twice in 2 years. Once when we drove past a hospital and he said she used to work there. Another time when he got a text during dinner and said it was her asking about an old controller she'd left behind. He rolled his eyes, deleted the text in front of me, changed the subject. I believed him because I wanted to. Standing in that lobby, watching her lean on the counter like the place was hers, I understood that nothing had been ignored. Everything had been maintained. I didn't confront him after I left. I didn't send a paragraph explaining how betrayed I felt. I drove until my hands stopped shaking and pulled into a smaller hotel down the road. Business travelers, neutral carpet, no ocean view. I checked in under my name and took the key. 4th floor, corner unit, parking lot and highway overpass. It wasn't the suite I'd imagined proposing in, but it was mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ring box. I opened it. The diamond caught the overhead light and scattered reflections across the beige walls. It looked perfect. It looked like a promise I would never make. I closed the box and set it on the nightstand. My phone buzzed. His name. I didn't open it. I called my sister instead. Emma answered on the second ring. I told her the plan had changed. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "I'm already at the airport. I'll be there in 2 hours." That was when the grief finally started to breathe. Emma arrived just before sunset, hair pulled back, blazer wrinkled from travel, eyes sharp in that way that told me she'd already chosen my side without needing details. She hugged me in the hallway outside my room, and that was the first moment my chest tightened. Not from anger, from the shock finally cracking. We didn't cry. We went downstairs to the hotel restaurant, ordered wine and something hot to eat, and I told her about the lobby, the matching suitcases, the way his face emptied when he saw me, the way his ex said I'd been gone for 2 weeks. Emma didn't react the way people do when they're trying to be comforting. She reacted the way someone does when they're listening for facts. When I finished, she asked one question. "Did you check the payments?" That's when I opened my banking app. We'd linked accounts months earlier to split dinners and shared expenses. It felt harmless at the time, transparent. I scrolled through his transaction history while Emma leaned in. September 14th, 1 year ago. Payment to Coastal Paradise Resort and Spa. $1,247.50. The memo line made my stomach drop. Anniversary getaway. I took a screenshots and kept scrolling. August 23rd, 2 months ago. $450 to his ex. The memo said, "Trip balance, can't wait." I stared at the screen, the dates lining up in a way that erased any doubt. He hadn't just kept the reservation. He'd celebrated their anniversary 3 weeks before he even met me. He'd updated the booking while I was working overtime to buy a ring. Emma read the memos out loud. "Anniversary getaway," she repeated, flat. "That's not confusion, that's planning." I forwarded the screenshots to my email, then sat back in the booth feeling oddly steady. The betrayal wasn't a single moment in the lobby. It was a timeline, a pattern, something that only looked accidental if you didn't bother checking. My phone buzzed again. Texts from him stacked up. "Where did you go? We need to talk. You're overreacting." I didn't respond. Emma took my phone, angled it just right, and snapped a photo of us at the table, wine glasses raised. "Smile," she said. "You're going to post this." "Why?" I asked. "Because silence makes people curious," she said, "and clarity makes liars panic." She posted it to my story with a simple caption. New city, new plans, good company, no location, no explanation, just the image. To anyone watching, it looked like I'd moved on within hours. To him, it looked like replacement. The reaction came fast. Calls, texts, voicemails. I set the phone face down and ordered another drink. Emma grinned. "He's unraveling." We stayed until closing. When we got back upstairs, I turned my phone on long enough to see the messages. "Who is that woman? Are you seriously with someone else already? You're being childish. I can explain everything." Ronald left. He called me manipulative. "Are you happy now?" That last one almost made me laugh. I turned the phone off and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke to 37 missed calls and 14 voicemails. I listened to exactly one. His voice was shaky, frantic. "I made a mistake. Ronald left. I'm alone here. I need you." I deleted it. I called the jeweler and asked about returning the ring. Christina said it would take 2 weeks to process. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. At 9, Emma knocked with coffee and bagels. We sat on the balcony watching traffic crawl along the overpass. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. It was Ronald. He apologized. Calm, direct. He told me he genuinely didn't know about me, that he'd been told we broke up 2 weeks ago. Then he said there was more. He'd gone through their messages and found months of overlap. He emailed me screenshots while we were on the call. June. Do you ever think about what we could have been if we tried harder? July. I kept our anniversary trip. Do you want to come for closure? 2 weeks ago. Mark and I are done. I'm ready to move forward. I stared at the images, the dates stacking into a story neither of us had agreed to star in. Emma read over my shoulder, jaw tight. She was running 2 relationships, she said, and almost got away with it. I forwarded everything to my email and sat back, exhausted but clear. The truth wasn't dramatic anymore. It was documented, and I knew exactly who deserved to see it next. I didn't argue with him. I didn't send paragraphs or voice notes explaining how betrayed I felt. I let the evidence do what it was designed to do. Emma looked at me across the small balcony and said, "His parents deserve to know." She wasn't angry when she said it. She was certain. His parents loved me. His father had taken me to a baseball game months earlier and asked if I saw a future with his son. His mother had sent me recipes and photos of family gatherings I hadn't even attended yet. They didn't deserve a version of events built on lies. I drafted an email while the city hummed below us. 3 sentences. No emotion, no accusations. Subject line, why I left the resort. I attached the payment screenshots, the messages Ronald sent, the dates that showed overlap, not confusion. I wrote that he invited me on a trip he had booked with his ex a year before, that he told her we were done while planning a future with me, that I had been carrying an engagement ring. I sent it to his mother's email address and closed my laptop. The call came within an hour. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaking, apologetic, horrified. She said she had no idea, that they believed the trip was a couple's retreat for the 2 of us, that this was not how they raised their son. She said she was so sorry. I saved the voicemail. I didn't call back. I didn't need to add anything. By noon, he escalated. He started messaging mutual friends, trying to control the narrative, saying I'd abandoned him at a resort out of jealousy, that I'd misunderstood a closure trip. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Benjamin, the friend who introduced us 2 years earlier. He sounded confused. "What's going on?" he asked. He just sent me a long message. I told Benjamin to check his email. I sent everything. Screenshots, payments, messages, the email I sent to his parents. Benjamin went quiet for a full minute. Then he said, "I'm forwarding this to everyone. She's trying to make you the villain." He did. The truth moved faster than the lie ever had. Screenshots spread through the friend group. Questions piled up. His version collapsed under timestamps and memos that couldn't be explained away. People who had known him longer than I had started sharing their own stories, moments they'd brushed off before, patterns they'd ignored. One coworker mentioned he'd done something similar years ago, kept someone steady while chasing something unresolved. By evening, his messages turned aggressive. He accused me of ruining his life, of sending private information to his parents. He threatened to sue me for defamation. I forwarded the threat to a lawyer friend who laughed and said truth was an absolute defense. "Block him," she told me. I did. His number, his email, his socials. Ronald, too. Not out of anger, but because I needed silence to process what I'd just survived. The fallout didn't stop just because I stopped watching. Over the next 2 weeks, pieces of his life unraveled in ways I only heard about secondhand. His parents cut him off financially. They'd been helping him with rent under the impression he was building something stable with me. When they learned the truth, the support stopped. An eviction notice followed 18 days later. His job took issue with the personal messages he'd been sending during work hours. His schedule was cut to nothing. He quit before they could formally let him go. I felt no satisfaction hearing any of it, just a distant sadness that someone could destroy their own life over lies they didn't need to tell. I returned the ring 3 days after the trip. Christina processed the refund quietly, sympathy in her eyes. She said, "The right person won't make you wonder if you should propose." I nodded. I believed her. That night, for the first time since the lobby, I slept without my phone beside me. The truth was out. I didn't have to defend it. I didn't have to explain it. I had let it speak for me. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It happened in layers, like paint peeling when the surface finally gives. I wasn't there to watch it, and that mattered. Distance let the consequences be his, not mine. I heard fragments through people who didn't realize they were delivering updates. His parents stopped answering his calls unless it was about logistics. Money became a hard no. He tried couch surfing with friends, but stories have a way of preceding people. Invitations dried up. The kind of charm that works when everything is smooth doesn't survive accountability. I went back to my routine. Work, gym, Therapy. Not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs without turning myself into someone suspicious and closed. My therapist said something early on that stuck. You weren't naive. You were loyal. Loyalty without honesty becomes leverage in the wrong hands. That sentence reframed everything. It let me keep the part of myself that believes without excusing the behavior that exploited it. Emma stayed an extra day, then flew home. We talked less about him and more about me, about what I wanted that had nothing to do with anyone else's timeline. I signed up for boxing classes, 3 nights a week. The physical exhaustion felt like a reset my body needed. Each punch was a release I didn't have words for yet. I slept better. I ate better. I stopped checking my phone for updates that wouldn't change anything. A week later, a mutual friend mentioned he'd tried to spin the story again, softer this time, that he'd made mistakes but felt misled. The room went quiet, apparently, when someone asked him to explain the payment memos. He didn't. He couldn't. Facts don't argue back. They just sit there. I saw him once by accident at a coffee shop near my office. He was thinner, tired, laughing too loudly at something someone said, like he needed the sound to prove he was fine. He saw me too. Our eyes met for a second. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I nodded once and walked past. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a clean absence where anxiety used to live. The Ring refund hit my account 2 weeks later. I moved the money into a separate savings account and labeled it travel. Not because I wanted to escape, but because I wanted something to look forward to that belonged entirely to me. Emma suggested Iceland, cold, stark, honest. I booked the flights 2 months out. Planning something for myself felt new in the best way. He sent one last message through a mutual acquaintance asking if we could talk for closure. I said no. Closure isn't a conversation you owe someone who already said everything they needed to say with their actions. I didn't need him to understand me. I needed to protect the clarity I'd earned. By the time winter rolled in, the story had settled. Not disappeared, just stopped moving. And in that stillness, I realized something important. The reset trip didn't save my relationship. It saved me from a future where I would have kept negotiating my worth to stay included. I wasn't abandoned in that lobby. I was released. Time didn't rush in to replace what I lost. It moved carefully, like it was checking whether I was ready to be steady on my own. I let it. I stayed single longer than anyone expected. I wasn't punishing myself. I was recalibrating. I stopped mistaking intensity for intimacy and promises for plans. I learned what consistency feels like when it isn't negotiated. I went to therapy every other week and said the things I hadn't wanted to say out loud before, that I'd been proud of being the flexible one, that I'd worn patience like proof of love, that I'd confused being chosen with being needed. My therapist didn't correct me. She asked better questions. She helped me separate loyalty from self-erasure. The answers came slowly, then all at once. I boxed 3 nights a week until my knuckles ached and my shoulders burned. The routine grounded me. It gave my body a place to put the adrenaline that used to spike when my phone buzzed. I stopped replaying the lobby scene. I stopped wondering what I could have said differently. The truth had already done its work. In early spring, I started dating again without an agenda. Coffee walks, museum afternoons, conversations that didn't feel like auditions. I was honest about what I wanted and what I wouldn't negotiate. One man bowed out early, said he wasn't ready for that level of clarity. I wished him well and meant it. Another stayed, listened, showed up on time, paid his share without commentary, remembered small details without being prompted. It felt quiet. It felt safe. We took things slowly. No rush to define, no pressure to perform. When I told him about the resort, I didn't dramatize it. I said the facts and watched how he responded. He didn't interrupt, he didn't minimize. He said, "That must have been disorienting," and left it there. I knew then I was in different territory. A year after the trip, I stood on a rocky overlook in Iceland, wind cutting across the water, the sky doing that impossible thing where it can't decide on one color. I thought about the ring I'd returned and the proposal I never made. I thought about how close I came to anchoring my future to someone else's indecision. The cold air felt honest, bracing. I smiled into it. I didn't text anyone from that overlook. I didn't post. I let the moment be mine. When I look back now, I understand something I couldn't then. The reset trip wasn't meant to fix a relationship that was already hollowed out by lies. It fixed my tolerance for confusion. It ended my habit of explaining myself to people who benefited from not understanding me. I walked into that resort carrying a ring and a future I thought was solid. I walked out carrying clarity, boundaries, and the courage to choose myself without theatrics. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I learned. And that lesson has stayed.